Phil Foden's stunning hat-trick against Aston Villa shows why he has to be the Footballer of the Year. If there are any lingering doubts about voters as to who should be crowned Footballer of the Year for 2023-24, Phil Foden underlined 3 times for emphasis why this is an open and shut case. If you look at other players, there's Alexis McAllister, he's been brilliant for Liverpool. Declan Rice, he's been the conductor for Arsenal's title bid. Ollie Watkins is tied in second in the scoring charts in the Premier League and is tied for the first in the assist table. Jared Bowen has 15 goals in a hit-and-miss West Ham side. And on Foden's own team, Rodri has been magnificent, as he so often is. So if you look at Phil Foden's year-on-year improvement, he started 2018-19 with 7 goals and 2 assists. That's gone all the way up to 21 goals and 10 assists so far this season. First, we'll look at the tactics between Manchester City and Arsenal. The match that ended 0-0. And we're going to see what the tactics were and then how Pep Guardiola changed things around this time against Aston Villa. So this is how both teams started. Man City started in a 4-3-3 and Arsenal started in a 4-2-3-1. But as the match went on we saw Nathan Ake, Ruben Dias, Guardiola, Kevin De Bruyne go up here with Haaland over here. Kovacic, he would be here. Foden playing on the wing will be somewhere around here. So Rodri and Akanji, they tucked in to form the double pivot, and obviously Bernardo Silva was up high here. So we had this back three over here with the double pivot of Rodri and Akanji, with Akanji, tucking in. De Bruyne, Kovacic, Foden, Haaland, and Bernardo Silva over here. So Arsenal, they stayed in their back four. Jorginho, covering Kovacic. We had Saliba, we had Gabriel, Ben White, we had Kivior. And so Gabriel Jesus, he would drop down here. And we had Declan Rice, who was between Akanji and Rodri would move up. And so we had De Bruyne over here. And so we had Declan Rice in between De Bruyne and Akanji. And Jorginho tight on Kovacic. This is City's high line, and we had Kai Havertz pressing Ruben Dias and Odegaard pressing Ake. So this is what it looked like mostly when Arsenal were pressing a bit higher and trying to get the ball away from City and trying to win it back. Arsenal's pressing was fairly passive, with Odegaard mostly on Rodri and Havertz on Akanji over here. We had Jorginho on Kovacic and Rice mostly on De Bruyne. This is basically, if you look at it, it's a 4-4-2. That's where Arsenal looked to, and sometimes, congest this side over here so that they wouldn't have, Manchester City wouldn't have much spaces between the defensive line of Arsenal. So this was compact and there was some gap over here. So City was allowed to have the ball in this region, but in this region they made it really compact, squeeze it around. Because, they knew that City, if they try to cross the ball inside, the only aerial threat was Haaland and not much else. So they wanted to keep City around this area over here, and then if they get the ball in the half spaces, so that no link up with two ball happens, they would squeeze this zone over here. Because this plan wasn't working, Pep had to change things around, and so he didn't really build up with Akanji and Rodri over here. How he changed things around was that Kovacic moved up here, Rodri here, and we had Akanji providing link up with Bernardo Silva over here. City basically just needed a back two to build up because Arsenal were sitting in a low block, so that there wasn't much of a threat. They didn't have Martinelli on. Guardiola, he would move up over here. So City's two fullbacks basically were all the way over here. What Pep needed was the game basically centered around who would provide the overloads in the central areas of the midfield. And so if we look at these four players of Arsenal, what Pep really wanted to do was he wanted to make it a 5v4 to get that overload. And so we saw Phil Foden, he would tuck into this zone, and we got De Bruyne here, so that's 4v4. So they needed one more guy. and that would be Bernardo Silva over here. So he would operate around this area, and if we look at it, this becomes a 5v4. Now that's how City got their advantage, but it's mostly in this area and not much going around here. The threat for Manchester City, they weren't really materializing into any sort of a high XG. When one of the City guys would drop deep and Foden would drop to form this overload here, for the first phase of build-up, Kovacic would sometimes, be over here, sometimes he'd be over here, forming this back three. What would happen was that this would provide Arsenal a pressing trigger, but they wouldn't press around here, they would press around this zone over here. The reason was that they didn't want Man City to build up through the central area despite City having that central overload. So what they did was they made the field more compact this way, horizontally compact as well, rather than vertically compact. That was the case, but horizontally making it horizontally compact was really important as well. If we have, for example, Kovacic here, Rodri here, Foden somewhere around here, what Arsenal did was Saka would move inside, and so he'd have Foden inside. We'd have Jorginho here, we'd have Rice here between De Bruyne and Rodri here, Bernardo Silva in this area, and so Gabriel Jesus would move up in this area. And so now if we look at Arsenal, the red guys over here, it becomes really, really compact. That was basically the key to keep Manchester City under a 1 XG. That was basically Arsenal's game. For them, 1 point was more important than, getting 0 and letting Manchester City get 3 basically, so that City wouldn't run away with it. Coming down to the Aston Villa game, Pep Guardiola changed almost the entire lineup of forwards, especially with De Bruyne and Haaland on the bench. Julian Alvarez coming in, we got Doku over here, Julian Alvarez here, Jack Grealish over here, and this guy Foden, he was the main guy for this game. Build up in back 3, 2, 5. So they had an attack of 5, a midfield of 2 for the build-up, and a back 3. And what Aston Villa did, Unai Emery, was that he also played a very defensive game. They were better in the first half, but second half everything came apart. And they had this, they were defending it in this back 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, very narrow. If the ball's over here, they would move over here. If the ball's around here, all these guys would shift around that area. And so it was a 5-3-2. So Foden over here, but when Foden would move around here to come close to Doku and make these inward runs, it was Rico Lewis who would drop deep and link up with the City defender to create this sort of, these triangles over here. Once the ball would move up and Foden would come here, either Rico Lewis would go here or even Rodri would move into this space. And that's actually how the first goal happened when Foden got the ball. It was a Messi-like pass over here to Doku, and Doku with the first touch over here, and you got Rodri over here scoring the first goal. It was all one touch from Doku, one touch from Rodri, and both guys, really good on that first touch. And it was basically Phil Foden moving here. So it was that Messi pass against Netherlands in the World Cup, where Messi was moving around here, and everybody was expecting that he'd make that pass here, but he made it to the blind side of the defender, and that's exactly what Foden did as well. How City provided that overload in the center, and why the difference Julian Alvarez makes when it comes, if you compare him to Haaland, is that if you got, for example, this is Rodri and this is Rico Lewis. Rico Lewis is going to be moving around this space over here, just like De Bruyne does. With Rico Lewis, really good on the ball with his feet. So if he, gets the ball and he beats this guy, he dribbles forward, and then obviously there's this link up with Julian Alvarez, who's much more, he's got much more maneuverability than Haaland, and so they can, like link up over here, and Foden and these guys can, move inside. And so there was that winger thread. What Guardiola basically wanted to do was he wanted to stretch Aston Villa, whereas in the Arsenal match he couldn't really stretch them because Doku and Grealish came on much, much later during the game. So in this game, the basic tactic was to stretch the defensive backline and have maneuverability in this space to Rico Lewis, Foden, and Julian Alvarez. So basically, that was the game, to have to stretch this thing and have a lot of maneuverability in this space, like movement going up, down, horizontally, vertically, everything.